Welcome to the Chapelcast. This is a bi-weekly podcast about the people and the life of the chapel. Subscribe to us from anywhere you listen to your podcasts and follow us on Instagram at the Chapelcast or go to our website, thechapel.org.
Hey, Chapel family, welcome to another episode of the Chapelcast. I'm Ted Voltmer. I'm here with Valerie Hunt.
Hi.
Hello, Valerie.
Hello.
And this week we're here with Samantha Voltmer, who many of you may recognize, and Christian Martinez.
Who many of you may recognize too.
Exactly. Christian's been around for a while. And so we brought them in because we wanted to talk about young adults in general, but specifically young adults in the church today. We'll get into why we think that's important. But let's start with just a little bit about yourselves for people who may not know you. Just Samantha, I'll start with you. I know you pretty well. But just talk a little bit about what you're doing now, just to give people a snapshot into your life.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Samantha. What am I doing now? I recently graduated from Seton Hall University, and now I am a marketing assistant at an engineering firm up in Flanders. And, working that
Excellent.
8 to 5 life.
Yay.
Good. Christian, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a recent grad from Liberty University in Virginia. And so right now I am with the chapel,
Yay.
interning under Brady and just working with media team. And I also act as kind of like a glorified babysitter with an after school program. So I've been doing that on the side, but yeah.
That's good.
That's
So we wanted you both here today, kind of representing young adults for us, bringing a different perspective that I don't bring. I won't speak for Valerie, but
Thank you.
So you're both Gen Z. And sometimes Gen Z and millennials get a bad rap. I know you're not millennials, but you're filling in today for all young adults. And the purpose for us was just to get a better understanding of what young adults are facing today. It seems like from conversations I've had, from things I've read, it seems like there's a lot of pressure on young adults today to succeed. And I certainly felt that coming out of school, coming out of grad school, it was very competitive. But even today, from what I'm seeing, it's at a whole different level, which I can't say I understand, because we were pretty, I came out of grad school in the late 80s, and that was a very aggressive time. But even with that, it seems like it's more on you all today. Where's that coming from? Do you feel that? And second, where's it coming from?
Yeah, I think like success can be measured in a multitude of different ways. And I think generation to generation, you're probably going to see more of a difference in that. Whereas I feel, just the impression that I've received, success for the past generations is like, hey, just get something, get a good job, put a roof over your head, have a nice, comfortable life.
But do you guys feel like that because it's so, technology is like such it's like a staple. Everything revolves around technology these days. And do you feel like that encourages you to like try harder and succeed harder?
I would say definitely. This is funny. I just read an article today by Seth Godin, and he was talking about how hunger and thirst are often confused. And in this world today, hunger is like, you're hungry for more. You're hungry for more success. And you look around and everyone's like, posting about their successes, and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not there. They're my age. Like, I got to get to that point. And you're just hungry. But you can't be hungry alone. You also need the thirst, and the thirst is something more long term. So I definitely feel like, yes, you can make a lot of short-term goals for yourself, but you burn out.
Yeah.
I remember that Seth Godin article you talked about hunger versus thirst. And that I do want to shout out to young adults, because I think you all do that much better than I did at your age, meaning that the thirst was for something of significance, thinking what's more important, what's the legacy, what's the long term. And we see that, we see young adults taking the forefront in the conversations around climate control and the important things. And where does that come from, do you think? Because I think you as a generation do that really well. And I'm always wondering, where's that come from? Because we were so focused on the here. I was so focused on the here and now.
Yeah.
You guys are taking the bigger picture.
Like this need to change the world.
Yeah.
I've noticed that.
Where does that come from?
Well, I think part of it comes from your generation. Like Nicole, my sister, always loves to say, like, half our problems right now are caused by the older generation, and yet we're getting blamed for them. But
that's what she says behind my back.
Wow,
she says that all the time.
All right, we'll
She's
talk about
not
that.
wrong. I mean,
Yeah, I hear you.
I didn't create the airplane with jet fuel,
That's true.
True.
but
true.
it's
Neither did I.
it's like the way I look at it is, you want long term, you want to like fix these problems. But yeah, big picture thinking is definitely, I feel like, a quality of our generation.
That's an excellent reminder. You're absolutely right. That is a gift that you all bring, the big picture thinking, that, just speaking for the guys I graduated, very narrow focus.
Yeah.
So that's good.
And I
Which
think
is a great
there's-
quality to
Yeah.
have,
It's
because
fantastic.
what you guys do in this generation sets what happens in the next generation
Right.
after you.
Yeah,
So if
exactly.
it goes back to the generation before you, I mean, thank goodness for you guys then.
Yeah. So let's look at the flip side, though. We know from what we see, from what we read, from my role here in the church, that anxiety and depression in young adults is almost epidemic. And I'll pause there. What do you say to that?
I'll let you go first because I have a lot to say on this matter.
Yeah, I'm definitely no expert in anxiety or depression. I've definitely experienced quite a bit of anxiety, and I still do kind of deal with it here and there. I find where a lot of anxiety comes from is just being overwhelmed, with knowledge, just being overwhelmed with things that I think that there's a certain level in which we can kind of receive a lot of information and be able to process it. But I think with the introduction of social media, we've kind of become attuned to constantly being involved with other people's lives, constantly knowing where this person's at or what this person's doing. And I think in that, it being removed from that at any moment, at any point, brings this unsettling feeling that you're becoming disconnected. And it's kind of like a bit of like a separation anxiety to social media, right? To that world. And that's why I think I see a lot of kids who will do social media fast. Like we're the generation of fasting, or the generation of diet. Yeah, digital detoxing.
Digital
I feel like, and I think that's really telling a lot of how saturated life becomes, and how really it can be very just overwhelming.
What would you say to the whole anxiety, depression question?
Well, I think a couple things. First, I think it's nothing new. And I say this because I think a lot of like serious mental illness is hereditary, and just like any other like conditions people have. So if you're really suffering, there's a good chance that one of your relatives are as well, who are older than you. So I don't really think it's like something new for our generation. I do think, however, the highlight of being aware of your mental health is definitely something new and something our generation should be proud of. Because like any other illness, mental health is an illness.
Sure.
You can't physically see it. Like if I get chicken pox, you can definitely see it. And I'm like, I need to go to a doctor. I need to be, get an antibiotic. Mental health is harder because you really don't know what's going on in someone else's head.
Sure.
It's just a conversation between you and yourself.
Me, myself, and I.
You can't know unless someone shares, and everyone chooses how to share and what they share. So I think it's something we're finally deciding to share with other people. It's like, okay, yes, this is how I feel and I need help. And this is how I can help others by telling others how I feel, and so they don't feel alone. So I think that's something that, yes, mental health anxiety and depression seems to be an epidemic amongst us, but I really don't think it's anything new. I
It's
think it's
not
always
worse.
been there.
Yeah.
Just the awareness is more widespread.
Yes, we're more
And-
open to talking about
That's
it.
good, which
And
is
I
probably
feel
healthier
like-
in the long run.
Yeah, and I feel like there's more conversations being had about it because it's not something to be ashamed about
Yes.
anymore. And that's another good thing your generation is doing because you've brought it to the forefront and you feel free to talk about it, which allows people like me to talk about it with my family.
Right. I do think the triggers are different with our generation.
What do you mean?
Like, so if you think about it, people who were young adults back when World War II was happening, I'm sure their lives were riddled with anxiety and depression. But for a different reason than, say, my generation is. My generation, we have social media, we have like all these other triggers.
Yeah.
We don't have a war going on to trigger it, but it's still the same underlying reactions to these triggers. So it's kind of, it's like having that like social media and stuff definitely doesn't help the mental health. But I wouldn't go to the length of saying it caused this.
No.
Like, I don't think you can point a finger at one thing, especially with our generation. And I feel like a lot of people are like, well, social media, we didn't create it. You guys gave it to us.
Yeah.
Just saying. Like, just saying. You can't really point a finger at that because it's just different.
Yeah.
But it's the same underlying illness.
Interesting.
What do you think like the top 3 triggers for depression and anxiety would be or are?
I feel like the feeling of being alone is definitely like a common thread. Like, even if you listen to some music by like artists who are around our age, like you just feel this sense of like this fear of being alone. And I think that's definitely something that triggers anxiety and depression is like, I feel like we're constantly overfed with like the idea of like the ideal life, and life looks different for everyone, but it's like we have this like idea, and so when you don't live up to that expectation, especially like the loneliness aspect, I feel like.
So you're saying like if you don't live up to that expectation, you feel like people are gonna leave you?
Yeah, that or like,
that's kind of sad.
like you're not good enough, you know.
Sure.
That's another thing too. I would say.
Okay.
The connection point is interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I can totally see that. And it's a little ironic in an age where we have so many ways to connect. Maybe that makes it even more magnified when you feel disconnected, similar to what you were saying, Christian.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I can totally see that.
These kids are put into the church by their parents, right? It's an expectation from the family. You're going to go to church. You're going to be a part of it, even though, you know, even if you want to or you don't want to, you're going to be there.
Sure.
Then you go through this college age period. Okay, I'm detaching from my family. My family is now expecting me to be independent, be in charge of my own decisions, my career. So a lot of kids, even when they go away, they just tend to kind of detach from everything. Church, friends, family. And after that post-grad life, you're not thinking about church. You know, you're thinking about my career. I'm not thinking about my spirituality. I'm thinking about my finances sometimes. You move on to a generation after that, young couples, young adults are starting a family. Most places are going to be wanting to look for a decent education system. And if you kind of grown up as a Christian, you'd be like, okay, now's a good time to get planted right back in the church. So there's an obligation there, right?
Sure.
And it becomes family is what I see. And so when it comes to reaching college age students, it's, I would say, a much more intentional and an extremely aggressive ministry. Because these kids need a reason to come to church. There is no longing for it.
Interesting.
I can't speak for everyone because I grew up in a church and it's kind of just been a part of my life, and it's just, you know, my faith with Christ. Like, that's what brings me back.
Right.
Right. And I would say it's this case for most Christians. But if you're talking about reaching an untouched generation,
Yes.
it's going to be way more than just a church service or a weekly meeting or anything like that. It's hands in the, feet on the ground. moving with that generation for sure.
And help me understand the barrier though. So it's because they don't feel like the church has anything to say to them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like there's this mentality, and I don't know if Sammy will agree, it's what's in it for me kind of mentality. I'm not going to do this job. It's kind of almost a sense of entitlement.
Sure.
Like I feel like I should, if I'm going somewhere, I should really be getting something out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that can be the biggest barrier, or the kind of the biggest gap, is communicating. This is what Christ has for you. This is what a community of believers has for you.
Yes.
You know, this is the value in staying in community. And I think a lot of kids just don't see that.
Yeah, I'd agree. I feel like a lot of people think that as long as I'm a good person, I'm good. And so they don't see the other side of things. They don't see the benefits of coming and like going to church and spending an hour every Sunday. You know, they don't see the benefits of that, because as long as they do good, they're good.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is they don't necessarily feel the need at this stage in their life. And the flip side, they don't necessarily see the benefit of carving an hour out of a Sunday to go and be a part of the church.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's on us as the church to help them to do both, I guess, to help expose the need and to show the benefit as well.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a universal truth. I think Christ faced those same things.
Absolutely.
It's part of human nature regardless of the generation.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of the mentality like, oh, well, I did this when I was a kid, or like my parents made me do this, so now it's like my choice, and I just, don't.
Yeah.
So it's like breaking the mentality that there's like no mentality that I'm doing this for myself.
Yeah.
So I think breaking that and saying like, no, you're doing this for yourself.
Interesting. That's a good word, because we do see that. That's part of the challenge with student ministries, quite honestly, because once they leave high school, they're either going to the workforce or they're going off to college. They're leaving, like you were saying a minute ago, Christian. And then when they come back, they don't feel a connection to the church.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't their connection, it was their family connection or their parents' connection. They didn't make a connection. So what we talk about all the time in student ministries is how do we help them feel connected on their own, not just because they're parents, so that when they do come back, they have something to come back to.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge.
And does that start in student ministries, like you said?
It really does.
I mean, I feel like it's a little surfacey for me to say this, but like, you want to like establish something, because when it is your choice, because I mean, I went through that too. I grew up in a pastor's home, and I was like, I'll go to church if I feel like it, because I'm an adult now. And but once you make that choice for yourself, there's got to be a reason for you to make that choice. So if you felt like you were just coming to church because your parents were making you, is there something that the church, like how do you do that though, to make them make that choice? What is it that the church needs to provide to make you go, okay, I've graduated college, I'm moving back, and this is where I'm going to live now and have my career and my job and my family? What's going to make that switch in you again to go, hey, let me think about church?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Where does that connection point come back?
Yeah.
I think the church like needs to open those doors. I don't think necessarily the individual will be the one to open the door.
So help me understand, what does that mean? What does that look like?
Like something enticing, whether that's events the church holds, things targeted at us specifically. Like everyone wants to feel needed. And I feel like if the church could somehow make us feel needed, that would be very enticing. And then once you're there, you really can't compete with great preaching. So
That's a good answer.
I like your point about, open doors. I think that's important. Cause I feel, a lot of kids, especially, you consider the social climate, you consider what the loudest voice that you're hearing nowadays. It's certainly not the churches, and a lot of that is, what's a message that's going to cut through that? And, I think the answer to that has been unchanged. It's relationships, like that is, I think, the root of who we are as people. I mean, that's how Christ chooses to interact with us and through us, is through relationships. So I think enticing is important, but I have found that life change happens in the one-on-one conversations. Yeah. And I think that, and it's funny because the way that the church culture, how our generation chooses to interact with each other, compared to how prior generations, you have like the whole thing of like Web 2.0 versus Web 3.0, where Web 2.0, it's all about mass communication, man. Let's make a message that appeals to as many people as possible, and maybe a few will come. But now we've switched to this generation of, man, I have to make sure my message is tailored to every preference you have. When you look at Amazon, you look at Google, the reason why you're clicking on those Facebook ads is because they know you. Right. And that's how they're bringing you through those open doors. And the way we handle ourselves in the church shouldn't be any different. But we can't expect to bring people in and entice people if we don't know them.
So you said go out, outside of the church to find young adults and bring them in. So once we bring them into the church, is there something here for them? And if there is, what is there that you would like to see in a young adults ministry at church that would keep you coming back?
It's a good question.
I think there's a moment, or not a moment, but considering these people are coming out, they have questions, right? There's a lot of curiosity, there's a lot of fears. And I think creating environments or opportunities or events in which, hey man, we can have dialogue, like we can talk about that. We can converse, we can express our opinions in a Christ-centered way, right? And we can talk about what the Bible says about that. But I think the key, again, is that relational aspect. I don't think that kids my age are necessarily looking for, I don't think a church service is at the forefront of their mind of what they're looking for and expecting of a church. I think what they're looking for is a community.
It's good. It's good.
Sammy?
I would agree. I think of one of my friends who lives out in Ohio, and she is super connected in her church. And I think the average age of her church has to be like 35. So it's definitely, they know who their target audience is, and they do activities. And like even her personal Bible study that she's in with her friends looks so fun, and I would totally go if it wasn't in Ohio. So it's like the community aspect is definitely something that we all crave, and that just like goes back to everything we've been saying. Like
the connectedness.
Yeah. And so having something like that that gives you that opportunity, that's not cliquey, it definitely would be beneficial and attractive to our generation. And things that are, fun, and not necessarily like you were saying, like those deep conversations are great, but sometimes if you had a long day at work, you don't feel like being philosophical or like watching what you're saying or looking smart. You just want to go and hang out, chill, relax. And I think that's something that is universal for our generation.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for having a group that you can go to where there are people that are like-minded like you. They're going through the same struggles. They just graduated college. They're paying back their student loans, and to have a place where you feel safe to come and talk about things and not, still have the Bible aspect behind it, but still have the community. Yeah. Which, I mean, at the Chapel, we promote small groups.
Yep.
Small groups.
And
the best way to be part of a family is join a small group.
So it's our announcement, girl. But so I feel like young adults could benefit from even small groups within.
Yeah. I mean, I personally love going to Chapel Women. Shout out to my girls. But there's to an extent that I can relate to them. I don't have kids. Like, I don't have to worry about my aging parents yet. Like, so it's good to, happy birthday. No. It's good to surround myself with them because I'm like getting a lot of good advice and like we do have a lot of similarities, even though I'm a good 20, maybe 30 years younger than them. So of course I wish they were around my age and I could like talk to them about like how to pay off student loans or like, I really want to get a dog. Should I get a dog? Like, like things like,
No.
things that are on the forefront of my mind
Sure.
are different than the things that are on the forefront of theirs.
Oh, that's well said.
But I love the community aspect.
Right.
And that's what keeps me going back every Tuesday is because I love being around them. And I feel like if we can somehow
having that community with a group of women, young men too, in a similar life phase, that would be even better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
And you know, it doesn't have to be anything super like traditional. Like I love the new Sunset Ministry Center, but even if we all just like went out to dinner, you know, just something.
Sure.
It's like I'm saying, like opening the doors for young adults and giving them something that they want to go back to, that they want more of, will definitely encourage them to come back.
Well, it's a good word.
And you said like for you, well, not for you, but you said you feel like a trigger for anxiety and depression was feeling alone. And if you had a young adults group, maybe you guys would not feel so alone.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely.
And that's one thing I think the church can offer is a place for you to not feel alone.
Yeah. Definitely a place for peace is definitely needed. So
yeah. A safe place. I'm just thinking, Valerie, because we've done a number of these today.
Yeah.
But in our podcast with the team from More Than Conquerors, talking to Heather Horn recently about family ministries, Corey Daniels about student ministries, the constant theme for me is the church should be at the forefront of these things.
Yes.
We do have a valuable and viable message, and we should be modeling. Gosh, when you talk about relationships and connection and peace, if not the church, then who? We should be at the forefront of this.
yeah.
Right. And it should be something that you think about, and like the church should really like, it should be at the forefront of their mind of like, what's the next step to like make it happen and do whatever it is to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I don't have the answers because
I mean, going back to the whole, we're thirsty. We're not
Yeah.
only hungry, we're thirsty.
Yeah.
And when I hear a phrase of I'm thirsty, I immediately think of, you know, I am the living water.
Amen.
So
Yeah.
got to hand out the cups.
yeah. you know,
good.
and the church should be going out of their way to like make that something. And I'm not saying we're not. I'm just saying.
No, we need to do more of it.
Yeah.
There's-
it needs to be intentional.
Yeah,
Super intentional.
definitely.
All right.
Okay.
This has been really good. Thank you both very much. I really appreciate the insights and kind of a different perspective. For me, in the role that I'm in, good to hear the challenges that the church needs to face up to when reaching the young adults. Also encouraging, though, in the insight that you brought and the big picture thinking that you provide. So thanks for that.
Absolutely.
This has been good. Any last parting thoughts before we go? Just last chance.
Would you like us to hit you up on Instagram?
Yeah, hit me up on Instagram at Sami Grace 1M1I _. No,
so
but
great.
seriously, if you ever need someone to talk to, DM me. I'll hit you up.
Oh,
Cool.
there you
That's
go.
always looking for friends.
Nice.
That's so good.
All right.
No, it was good.
Valerie, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted.
Christian, Sammy, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, Chapel family.
That's a wrap. Thanks again for joining us. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. This podcast is also available on video. Just head over to YouTube and search for the Chapelcast.